Good morning. All right. So we'll be watching the VIX this morning. Watch the VIX. If the VIX starts to drop off quickly at the open, that's an indication that traders are selling put options. Traders are selling put options, taking profits. That could lead to a Vanna-induced rally back to 46.50 or so. So that's what I'm looking for today. The S&P is not out of the woods, of course, until or unless we regain 4,700. All right, we're below the hedge wall. The hedge wall is right around 46.75 or so. We got some pockets of weakness down to 46.20 and potentially 45.50. All right, so good morning, Robert. Yeah. Watch the VIX. If VIX starts dropping off, that'll tell you that they're selling puts and taking profits. Looking for VIX to drop off. At the open, we're up there near 20. We hit the highs of 26. It looks like 26.25. And extended hours. All right, let me just all right, so if we do start to see VIX dropping off, I would expect to see puts getting sold for profits and calls getting bought for a rally back to, I don't know, 468, 469 or so, potentially. Gamma flips at 46.50, support at 4600. We came down to 46.20 on the futures. This is S&P. All right, so I'm not going to react by doing anything dramatic until until I see what the markets tell us. All right, so no way of knowing what news can do, but we are in a negative gamma situation, so that has more impact when headlines are negative, when gamma's negative as well. All right, if people start buying puts at the open, the opposite is the case. You know that dealers are going to have to sell puts to market participants if they're buying puts, and that means they'll be shorting futures to get to delta neutral. Very important we watch VIX, okay? VIX at this level, puts are going to be really expensive, so we'll see. A lot of you are on the same page this morning. I see a lot of comments in the trading room about buying the dip and potential watch lists. All right, we got 8 minutes to go. This is your host, Custom Vinning, coming to you from theclosingprint.com. This fine Black Friday. And what a Black Friday it is. More of a red Friday for now. Hopefully it'll be a green Friday by the end of the day. It's the 26th of November. Can't believe November's already gone and behind us. And at Christmas, if you celebrate it, Christmas and the holidays are ahead. All right, Amazon. Amazon's up 38 points this morning, pre-market, trading 36.18. Again, I see a lot of you in the trading room on the same page, so that's good. I've found it's best not to overreact or to trade until we get 15 or 20 minutes under our belt and we see what the institutions and dealers are doing. Then we can make a educated decision. I'm looking for VIX to drop off as a signal. If it does, I'll buy some calls down here. Probably the 466s. I have hedges, by the way. Those hedges are left.
Sky News reporting European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says all air travel to countries with cases of the new COVID variant should be suspended.
All right. All right, we've got 5 minutes to go for the opening bell. Again, I won't be doing anything rash or taking any kind of knee-jerk reaction. I'm looking for VIX to drop off. That would be my first signal to watch for. Novavax, of course, is up 13 points. mRNA, Moderna, 41 points. All right, Moderna, mRNA. All right, Moderna right now is trading 315. It's right underneath the 50-day moving average. So Steve Weiss is going to look like a genius today. All right, let's see. We got 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes to go for the opening bell. Don't make any, I can't tell you what to do, but I'm not going to make any rash decisions at the open. First time we've been down 75 handles in quite some time. We have a negative gamma situation, so that's going to exacerbate any news. Looking for dips to get bought. Watching tick cumulative as well to tell me what institutions are doing at the open. Watching the puts and call flow. We've got Rick in the trading room, which will be watching that most likely, as usual.
Shares of Moderna making new highs ahead of the open, 319.66. Michael Romeo November Alpha mRNA.
All right. All right. So looking good here. Looking for markets to shed some volatility. VIX at the highs. Looking for that to drop off. If it doesn't drop off and we start to see puts being bought heavily, then look for dealers to sell those puts to market participants and that start selling futures to offset their delta to neutral. All right, so we're about to open. We've got less than a minute to go. Cool heads prevail. Just be calm. I know it's tough for new traders to see the markets down 75 handles, but we've seen a few of those from May of 2020 into current, and we are higher. We're trading just below all-time highs. All right, here we go. We're going. All right, Microsoft down, Facebook's down, Google, Nvidia, Apple is finding a bid here. Apple's catching a bid. All right, VIX, watching VIX.
Extreme low ticker minus 800.
All right, VIX is starting to drop off here. I'm going to buy some SPY calls, knowing that I could get these calls taken away pretty quick. Let's see the 464s.
MTTR Matterport December 30 call sweep, Michael Tango Tango Romeo, MTTR.
All right, VIX dropping off. VIX dropping off. All right, so I just bought some calls. VIX dropping off.
Airline stocks moving further lower after the open. UAL, United Airlines, 42.48, down about 9%. Uniform Alpha Lima. Shares of Carnival Cruise Lines down 11% now at 17.93.
Just watching the markets. Watching the markets. Looking for futures to continue climbing here and for a SPY to follow through. Good morning, Frano. All right, let's look at the some of the airlines. Gapping down, gapping down. All right, we're below support. Moderna looking for a follow through. mRNA. All right. SPY pulling back a bit more.
AERC, Aeroplane Technologies, resuming after a circuit breaker haul at 75.96. Down about 3
Moderna trading 3.6 R ball.
Low tick alert minus 800.
Moderna is in play. BioNTech, BNTX. That one was looking good last week. BNTX, BNTX. Gap and go. ATR of 22. It's up double that. All right, let's take a look at the 10-year yield. TNX. That gap down. So the banks are going to be off a bit.
Low tick alert.
Financial services being sold at the moment. MasterCard back down to the lows. From last week, MasterCard looking for a bounce. SPY testing the pre-market low right here. If we start to drop off, watch VIX. We're at extremes. We're in a negative gamma situation, so you know that we could see more downside action. Kroger looks good. Kroger building the right side of the cup. Kroger looks good. It's up $1.08. Let's take a look at Kroger. KR. It's got an ATR just over $1.
Minus 800.
All right, looking for a bounce here. We just tested the pre-market lows here. Kroger. Relative strength is pretty remarkable. Kroger. Keep an eye on VIX. VIX is still pushing higher.
Low tick alert.
All right. Probably going to scalp some puts here on SPY for today. Let's see what they look like. Yeah, they got pretty expensive. Puts are very, very expensive. All right, looking for VIX to back off now. All right, we're starting to see buyers coming in. Futures seeing buyers. Shorts for now. Take care, Vantair. Have a good one. All right, VIX is still hanging in there. All right, so They could continue to just sell as VIX rallies higher.
Low tick alert minus 800. Extreme low tick alert.
Moderna continuation through the 50-day. Could be one of the biggest days in a while on Moderna. Gilead, looking for a follow through. Gilead. You could just trade XLV as well. XLV. All right, that looks good. Looks like a sort of cup and handle. It's been in a range for the last few weeks. XLV. IHE is the pharmaceutical index. IHE. Or you can trade IBB, biotechs. That's coming off the lows. Biotechs are probably going to continue higher, I would think. Pretty big spread in IBB. All right, looking for the bounce in the indices. All right, let's keep an eye on VIX. VIX, big spike up to previous highs. We're probably going to see a reversal, if not today, next week. So we're looking for that reversal.
PXD, Papa X-ray Delta, IBC, selling Pioneer Natural Resources shares just off the lows here, 178.28. That's Papa X-ray Delta, Investors Business Daily, selling PXD.
All right, VIX is starting to reverse. Here we go.
Low tick alert minus 800.
VIX is backing off, watching this low here. All right, so the markets are starting to settle down a little bit. All right, still early. All right, VIX still spiking around here. Kroger is on the move. On the move. Kroger. KR is on the move. All right, watching for SPY to reverse. Looking for institutions and dealers to start selling volatility, take profits. Looking for a reversal in VIX.
Earlier, that's from Foxtrot Echo PFE.
All right, Kroger still going. Into it, looking for a follow through. INTU, into it. All right, watching that flat VWAP for now. Watching Kroger, continuation. Kroger. All right, so SPY is just sitting here for now. There is a possibility this could be a doji day, too, just down at the lows. No conviction going into Monday.
Low tick alert minus 800.
Amazon starting to bounce now. Delta Airlines dropping off more. All right, SPY looks like it's about to bounce. All right.
It's 10 o'clock.
tick alert minus 800. Extreme low tick alert.
LGVN, Longeveron shares resume trading in the Gulf Victor November. 39.30 now on LGVN.
All right, so we're just stuck here. Not doing anything until I can see a clear direction. We could be in a doji, just get chopped up. Futures pulling back a bit. VIX at the highs. All right. A number of the stocks that are showing above average volume: Moderna, Novavax, names related to biotech, COVID, getting bought up. Let's see, what's Moderna doing now? Moderna is up 60 points, flagging at the high. All right, looks like SPY is going to drop off here. Futures moving a bit lower. Delta just drifting lower. Airlines being sold. American Airlines. All these are at the lows. Delta. Cruise lines, CCL. Look for more weakness as we hear more about this new strain that everyone's talking about. All right. All right, SPY at the lows. All right, so the hotels, Hyatt, Hilton, those gapping down bigly.
BFRI halted on a circuit breaker. Bravo Foxtrot Romeo India.
All right, look for a test of the 200-day.
$82. 50% now. That's BFRI.
BFRI. I don't know what that is. All right, so it looks like they got some speculative trades on BFRI. All right, Moderna. I want to keep an eye on Moderna.
Low tick alert minus 800.
All right, SPY pulling back a bit more. Moderna. All right. I'm sitting tight, not doing much. Been sitting on my hands, except for those SPY calls, which could end up being
November Alpha.
profitable once we see VIX turn around. If we see VIX turn around. All right, Moderna. Steve Weiss must be pretty happy. VIX 2675 high of the day.
NRX Pharma noting new data on BioLife COVID-19 vaccine effectiveness against Delta variant posted by Israel Institute for Biological Research. That's NRXP. November Romeo X-ray Papa NRXP.
Low tick alert minus 800.
All right, let this the morning settle down. Let the market settle down. Starting to see buyers coming in. Shorts covering at this rate, at this point. Shorts.
NRXP halted on a circuit breaker. $4.90.
Gilead looking for a follow through in Gilead. Watching Gilead for a push higher. You can trade IHE, the pharmaceutical index. This one's sitting on top of the 21-day. If most of the pharma names start to go, or biotech, you can trade that as well. Got a double bottom, looking for a follow through. We have support over here as well in June. Looking for a push back up to the highs. Novavax with a big move today. Novavax with a gap up, tagging 221.61. VIX, I'm not doing anything, folks, until I can see what the markets have in mind. If we're going to see more downside, let's go see what the SPY 60-minute. Don't overreact. Got a low over here, 462.
Dow futures now down about 900. The S&P futures down at 89. NASDAQ futures down 188. Crude down $6.65 at 71.75.
DNA. Ginkgo Bioworks. Don't know them. Don't know them. They are oversold.
Letter M, Macy's. Macy's says Black Friday store
Low tick
traffic
alert minus 800.
exceeded our expectations in the first couple of hours. That's letter M. Macy's CEO saying that. Letter M.
VIX still pushing higher. Watch the VIX.
That from Bloomberg.
Looking for a reversal in VIX. So I guess my mother-in-law is not going home anytime soon. All right. SPY still looking weak. VIX still looking strong. All right, VIX still pushing higher. SPY still pushing lower. Looking for it to flush out some people. Dow's off 2.5%. Comp is down 1.5%, and the S&P is off 2%. The markets close at 1 p.m. Eastern today.
Extreme low tick alert.
More selling. All right, so last week we talked about junk bonds, J and K. That junk bonds would lead us lower. Okay, we were trading at highs. Junk bonds were leading us lower along with high yield corporate debt. So that was one of our major signals to be cautious coming into this week. So if you had hedges on, if you still have those hedges on, still watching for VIX to roll over. The puts from last week. Let's see what they're going to do. Market's moving a bit lower. All right, Delta dropping to new lows. Delta, the airlines, dropping to new lows. Delta at the lows of the day, that's still moving lower. All right, let's see what the most actives look like. Moderna, Pfizer, Insight, Quest Diagnostics, Bio. All right, so all of those. Clorox. All right, most down are the energy stocks. Energy stocks are off. Royal Caribbean, Carnival Cruise Lines, UAL, it's down 11%. UAL. All right. All the airlines are off. UAL's off the most, followed by Southwest, American and Delta, Alaska Air. All these gapping down.
Tick alert minus 800. Extreme low tick alert.
Delta, JetBlue, the Jets ETF. You don't want to pick a particular name. Watch for any bounce that gets sold. I don't think this variant the news is going to go away anytime soon. Think being the operative word. I have no idea. I don't follow a lot of the news. All I do know is that overreacting right now is not the best solution. Just wait for the markets to calm down. We've had these kind of days before, and we managed to get up to 47.20 or so in recent weeks. We've had down days like this, gap downs, where we had negative gamma, but the market's always found dip buyers eventually. So we're waiting for the eventually part. Caterpillar starting to reverse off the lows. Buyers. Looks like I'm seeing some of these really well-known names like Caterpillar moving higher. Kroger is flagging at the high of the day. Moderna is up 63 points. That's continuing. Gilead's flagging just below 70.70. High of the day was 70.75, it looks like. MasterCard, we'll find some buyers down there.
Low tick alert minus 800. Extreme low tick alert.
Nvidia is off 7. Back down to the lows. Looks like people are selling and asking questions later. Amazon pulled back. Facebook is off.
S&P futures dropping to the lows of the day, 45.94.
All right, that's one hell of a Maribozu candle on the downside. UAL is down 11, almost 12%. Cruise lines, these are all shorts for now. Transports. Boeing gapping down. All right. Truckers, rails gapping down, Caterpillar. Buyers stepping up though at the low. CSX. All right. Looking for VIX to eventually roll over. It's that eventually that will come with time. I'm not trying to guess right now what's happening. We're a bit lower. All right, so looking for buyers to come in, VIX to drop off hard.
Crude dropping to the low 71.02.
Waiting until after 10 o'clock is usually a very good idea, especially on a day like today. Institutions are probably sitting there with their arms folded watching the action, looking for a point which they'll start to buy. We haven't seen the buying yet. It looks like a little short covering here on the spiders. So VIX will turn over at some point. I'm sure the bears over on StockTwits are having a good day, jumping up and down, calling the bulls names again. That's usually a sign that we're about to bounce in the short term. All right, watching shorts covering. All right, we got hammers forming on futures. All right, tick cumulative is back above zero. Tick is back above zero. All right, VIX starting to roll over. All right, this is starting to look more like a reversal candle. All right, get everybody short, then turn around and make a push to the highs. All right, so we got Clorox trading 2.7 RVol. You saw Clorox last time around. Last time COVID hit big, Clorox was a buy. Okay, I see other people talking about it as well. It's a nice bottoming trend break. Looks like a trend break. Alrighty, starting to look more like a good point. If we start to get back above 464, I'll probably add to my calls. For now, they're off a bit, as you would imagine. Looking for VIX to continue dropping off. This looks a little bit better than the open.
Popping 2125, November Echo Golf Golf.
Shorts covering, we got hammers forming. Still early.
ticker at -800.
Yep. It's pretty interesting, you know. I'm not going to say, you know what I'm thinking. It's pretty interesting how everything seems to, how it seems to happen. Anyway, just watching stocks like Clorox that did well. Zoom had a little gap down. We got a hammer forming on the weekly. As the price action reverses on Zoom, gap up this morning, gap down last week. DocuSign, Doximity, a lot of these stocks working well. DocuSign, DOCU, gapping up. Novavax, Moderna, all these look good, building the right side of their patterns. All right, we're starting to see shorts cover on the FANG stocks as well. All right, we might be close to a reversal. VIX is still trying to drop off. It's still at the highs though. I'm not doing anything until we get some kind of follow through. There's no reason, I can miss a day of, potentially buying the absolute low, but what's the point? I'm not trying to be a hero. What I'm trying to be is cognizant of what's going on in the market. So the markets are extremely volatile. You can be right, substantially right, or you can be substantially wrong. Right now, I'm waiting for VIX to drop off. It's starting to drop now, so this is looking better. I'll probably add to my calls soon. If you have hedges from last week, we took some hedges as well. Some puts, SPY puts, you might want to take some of those off. All right, stocks are starting to show signs of short covering. Yep. VIX starting to drop off. Okay. All right, so we got to get back up to the highs. Let's see.
Pharma shares still halted on a circuit breaker following a press release from the company.
Now that we're below the 21-day, you have to consider the fact that we got a lot of resistance overhead at 465.
On the effectiveness of their COVID-19 vaccine against Delta variant.
And you know that 4650 is a gamma flip point. $46.50 right there. That's $46.50. 4600 is critical support. We're finding buyers now right at 4600. Got some damage today. All right, so the markets are looking a little better here, starting to reverse. I'll add to calls if we can manage to get back above VWAP and start to trend in the opposite direction. I want to see volume really picking up substantially. MACD's turning, stochastics turning, RSI is oversold, so
Express check tweeting says Express check stands ready. X-ray Sandy Papa Alpha XSPA.
all right, looks okay. SPY starting to see more. Interesting. I've been following the puts that I would have bought had we been dropping off and VIX had been going crazy. If VIX wasn't already at the highs, I was just watching puts.
Well positioned to implement COVID testing if needed for South Africa and other countries being impacted by this new emerging variant. That's X-ray Sandy Papa Alpha XSPA. Shares of Express Pop about 5 and almost 6% now at $1.66.
And I plan to add the calls if we can get back above the highs. This could be a doji day, so just keep that in mind, all right? So this could be a doji on the daily. There's nothing that says we have to rally. All right, so this, well, so much for that idea. What I was thinking was the intraday, that we could stay down here and just chop around. We don't have to rally. It all depends on VIX. VIX is pretty persistent here.
Low tick alert minus 800.
All right, so we had a little bit of initial short covering on the FANG stocks. Now they're showing some more selling coming in. I wouldn't do anything. I'm not doing anything until I can see a clear trend starting to develop, even if it's a sideways trend. All right, VIX. VIX is pretty persistent here today, jumping around. It's 1033, still making higher highs, higher lows. If this was a stock, we'd be looking for a push higher or a lower high and a drop off. This looks pretty persistent. VIX. A lot of people were looking for it to get back down into the 14s and 15s. Timely how they managed to come out with another variant. And all these pharmaceutical companies are starting to develop more vaccines. What happened to the other vaccines? Watching VIX. All right, so we're not too far off of the extremes. Okay. Previous extremes, 3190. That was back in March, February, March. And then we had this extreme up here, 3750. To begin the year, 3750. So we could see a more upside. We could have a follow through. I'm looking for VIX to drop off. Most of the high relative volume names have to do with pharmaceuticals or biotechs and such.
AAPL, Apple, Investors Business Daily selling the remaining one-third position in Apple. Alpha Papa Lima, AAPL.
Kroger bouncing at VWAP right now.
Apple off the lows, 157.93.
Kroger looking for a follow through. Moderna flagging at the highs. Moderna. Okay, what would be nice to see is some of these stocks like Delta, etc. See some buyers step up at the low of the day. They're starting to show up. This turns out to be a hammer. Too early to tell. I wouldn't be surprised for one of these firms to miraculously come out with a variant, a vaccine that is good for the variant. Everybody start getting vaccinated for that variant.
That's November Romeo X-ray Papa Whiskey, NRXPW.
Doximity pushing higher. It's up 1.5%. Doximity. VIX needs to drop really, really, really hard. A resulting drop in VIX, you should see some pretty big candles on SPY. That would be not a guarantee, but that would be something I'd be looking for to add to calls. 464s, 462s, something close to the money. 464s, 462s, 463s. All right. SPY. A lot of you on the same page. The volume, watching the lower than usual volume. We've got about 16 blocks so far. Largest blocks, 251,000 shares. 469.39, 469.39. That was Wednesday's close, 469. Those blocks look like shorts covering. All right, lots of blocks, about 16 blocks.
Crude continuing its sharp sell-off down right now, almost 10%.
All right, SPY, we got about 16 blocks, 251,000 shares of popular level, 469.36. That's Friday's close, or excuse me, Wednesday's close. And most likely our shorts covering down here. All right, so we want to see more of that kind of activity. It's a Friday, so we have an OPEX, weekly OPEX. All right, we need to get above VWAP, and we need to really start to press the accelerator for me to get to add to a position. Right now, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting and watching. I don't care if I miss some early potential to buy the absolute low of the day. I'm not really interested in buying the absolute low. Not trying to be a hero or anything like that, but I'm looking for... Hold on a second, folks.
FRM affirm holdings getting a pop here, seeing the December 135 calls on Alpha Foxtrot Romeo Michael, AFRM. Also,
All right, the markets are not doing anything right now that's indicative of a major reversal at the moment. Yes, some shorts have covered. We got about 16 blocks, but VIX is still hanging pretty tough.
on Alpha Foxtrot Romeo Michael.
So we had a failed breakout on IWM. I did start a position in IWM last week, so that's off a bit on this gap down to the 200 days. So I'm looking for this range in here to hold. We could come all the way back down to this low. This is a long-term position anyway, so I'm not that concerned about it. But I bought some up in here last week near the 21 day. So we're down, what, 10 points on what most likely will turn out to be price action moving higher over time. It's in my retirement account, so it's not like I'm day trading or anything like that.
And our ex-Pharma shares are still halted at the highs, $4.90.
IWM.
37 minutes now, halted. Following their early press release on the effectiveness of their COVID-19 vaccine against the Delta variant. That's November Romeo X-ray Papa NRXP.
All right, coming off the lows, NRXP Pharmaceuticals. All right. So no follow through. VIX looks like it's going to pop up again. So yeah, we just have to wait. We have to wait. I'm not going to do anything until, they could start this. Well, I was going to say later this evening, but we close at 1, so looks like an inverted head and shoulders on a 5-minute.
Marijuana movement tweeting, Mexican senators circulate draft marijuana legalization bill, vote expected within weeks.
Neckline is at VWAP. Kroger is at the highs. Kroger having a pretty decent day. That was mentioned by Matt right at the open, right near the open where this started to take off to the upside. Kroger does this pharmacy along with some of the other major food retailers stores like Kroger, Publix, and others that have pharmacies inside, they do get subsidized for distributing vaccines. All right. All right, just watching the markets. I fully expect that this could take longer than most people, new traders, if you will, have the patience for. So you try to keep from making mistakes by just not doing anything, really, until the markets are clearly telling you what the institutions and dealers are doing. I still don't have a good read. Adobe with it's holding up pretty good relative strength. I see what you're looking at there, Rob. Pretty good relative strength. Shooting star back to the 90 MA. So if it starts to find buyers here, that'd be good. Autodesk had earnings last week, right? Autodesk with earnings, gapping down. Microsoft subscription models. Microsoft still has pretty good relative strength, even though it is off today. It's above the 21 day. It's not below the 50 day. It's certainly not gapping down at this point. All right, still the market's not giving us any good signals. Looking weak. All right, Kroger looks like it wants to continue here. Kroger, continuation. Kroger having a nice day. You can see this bullish candle here. We could, now that we're above this 43.35 zone, we could be back up to 47 pretty quick. Probably by next couple of weeks, we should see a retest of this high. It's building on the right side of the cup, left side, mark down, right side, the phase 2 is starting, mark up. We've broken the trend. We're above the 9, 21, and 50 day. All the moving averages are rising. So while I wouldn't buy it at the high of the day here, I do like it for a follow through. There goes Kroger. 5 minute is taken off to the upside. Kroger, continuation. Nice one.
material.
Kroger at the high of the day. All right, SPY does not look like it wants to follow through, does it?
Below the $70 mark, 69.48. The low's now down about 11.25% currently.
Okay. Just wait and see, folks. Wait and see. In the past, when we've seen days like this where price action, we're down 70 handles or so at the open, it usually takes a few days. So, not surprising that people are fearful in the markets right now. So, and the media is not making it any better. They're pumping up the anxiety, getting people scared so they go and take the vaccine, those that have been reluctant to take vaccines. Canada's talking about closing their borders. And I'm just adding to the anxiety by talking about it, but I wouldn't do anything at the moment. Danaher? Yeah? Okay. DHR? Gap up. Flat VWAP for now. Flat VWAP. Kroger. Microsoft. Just feels like one of those days it's coming back down and testing the low. So much for that inverted head and shoulders. We've had days where we would just stay down below VWAP and VWAP would flatten out and we wouldn't do much. VIX is still at the highs. You don't have an edge except to the downside. Playboy back to the 21 day. All right. right near the low of the day.
It's 11 o'clock.
Futures still looking pretty weak. The Nasdaq futures. Kroger at the highs. Moderna continuation.
Low tick alert -800.
All right, Novavax looking good too. Novavax. All right, Moderna continues to push a bit higher. All right, SPY looking for a push higher at this point. SPY trying to bounce. Okay, so far, this is what I've been looking for here. You see how it's spinning top? I was thinking spinning top or doji. The critical resistance overhead, immediate resistance is just overhead 465, this zone right in here. RSI on the daily could drop off a bit more, which means we could visit the 50-day. SPY. All right, we came down and tested the low. Buyers are stepping up on SPY. All right. Moderna continuation. Moderna 73 plus 73. All right, so all right. Moderna. All right, so SPY. All right, looks like it could sell a little bit more here. SPY All right, we've got the 50-day down there. That sure looks like a testable area. How many times have we tested the 50-day after running higher for multiple weeks? This latest one was a 6% correction. Now we're chopping around here, so another reversal to the 50-day would probably get bought heavily. People would sell, and then institutions would turn around and buy those shares for them. Seems like the most plausible scenario. I'm not doing anything until I see what VIX has got in mind. VIX is still showing it could pop even higher as the financial media continue to stoke the flames of fear. Kroger looks like a higher low trying to print here. Kroger. All right, futures looking pretty weak.
Minus 800.
Futures looking pretty weak. Still on sell signals. Futures are still on sell signals. Down volume is 13 to 1 on the NYSE, 3.5 to 1 on the NASDAQ. Tick cumulative market internals are not giving you a bullish signal yet. All right, where is NYMO? NYMO's at minus 76. All right, NYMO is minus 76. Moderna, new highs. Wow, Moderna is crazy strong. mRNA. Over here was when Moderna, there was still lots of speculation about whether or not we would see a peak in COVID. That was all during this year. And then we started to get a peak in COVID and price action went sideways. And then things started getting a lot better, lots fewer lockdowns potentially, and travel opening up. And then the Moderna started to drop off. What's happening now? Just the opposite. Same as what was happening over here in the beginning of the year, running up into the August peak. So instant replay. All right, we're testing the low of the day here. Futures testing the low. Futures testing the low of the day.
Minus 800. Extreme low. Tick alert.
NRXP shares resumed trading, hitting $8.89 at the high, up 92%. That's November Romeo X-ray Papa, NRXP.
Moderna. BNTX, BioNTech. Big move today as well. BioNTech plus 67. Novavax, big move today. Novavax, big gap up plus 20. Novavax, Moderna. Moderna. Wow, 350 next. So we consolidated for about 45 minutes and then took off to the upside. Moderna's still going. Let's not forget about gold, GLD. That got a bid this morning. Gold got a bid, gapped up. GLD. GLD. Let's see, GDX. Watching. All right, what's silver doing? SLV. Silver, that's below the 50-day. All right, so GDX not looking that great, but gold is looking pretty good. What's the US dollar doing? UUP. All right, so UUP, dollars pulling in. All right, SPY making new lows.
Minus 800.
All right, my SPY calls got stopped. It's about the time we'll see a reversal now. All right, so
NRXP halted on a circuit breaker. Shares pulling back off the highs now. $7.45 once again halted on a circuit breaker. That's November Romeo X-ray Papa NRXP.
Delta Airlines down to $35. Delta is off 11.8%. Delta. We've had these kind of days in the past, so don't lose it over 1 or 2 days of weakness. We could see this spill over into next week at this rate. VIX has not given us a signal yet. Continues to push higher. A couple of false signals. If you have bonds in your portfolio, like we do, got about 42% weight in bonds. Those bonds are moving higher. AGG. We talked about this on Sunday, that we saw this activity last week. Looked like institutions were parking money. LQD is another name. LQD looks like that's going to continue higher.
Bitcoin futures down 36.70 at 54,145.
All right, let me see. We had the stochastic scan, which had a lot of bonds in it. All right, stochastic still pointing higher, so these will probably continue higher. All right, so these bonds, Vanguard Total Bond ETF. Where is the? Yeah, that's one. Vanguard Total Bond ETF. BND.
Low tick alert minus 800.
All right, I might add some exposure. To bonds.
ATN Palatine Technologies, writer Biotech Labs blog. has Palantir developed PL8177 as a potential treatment for COVID-19 and associated lung complications, and more clinical readouts to be announced. That's a Papa Tango November PTN. That's a Seeking Alpha post from Biotech Labs blog. PTN.
All right, BND, let's see, BND 8531. All right, I added some BND, Vanguard Total Bond ETF. All right, that continues to push higher. All right, the S&P is still pulling back. So these bonds will cushion the downside. I'll take those off once we start to see potential, or start to scale out, I should say. I'm up to about 44% in my bonds exposure now. I had 42% prior to buying some bonds. The BND, Total Bond ETF. So I bought some of that. All right, let's see, LQD. All right. So these bonds will help cover some downside protection, hedges, if you will. All right. So many of these are bouncing. 10-year yield is moving lower. TNX moved lower.
Canada's health minister to brief media later on Friday about new variant of COVID-19. That from a government minister reported by Reuters now.
All right. Delta continues to drop off. All right, so it looks like they took out stops underneath for now.
Moderna shares at the highs now up 27.5%. $350 at the high for Moderna. That's Michael Romeo November Alpha mRNA.
All right, so sitting and waiting, turning out to be the smarter thing. I think it stopped out of some calls. I'll buy them again if they start to push back up above VWAP. SPY gets above VWAP. For now, though, VIX is pretty persistent. It could stay that way for a little while. Doesn't have to back off in one day. Probably won't back off in one day. If we see that, though, we'll let you know. For now, weakness persists, and just go with the trend. The trend is down for now.
NRX Pharma shares continuing to tick lower here, following resuming trade. That's November Romeo X-ray Papa. NRXP.
So just so you know, as far as retail is concerned, my wife is going out with the mother-in-law. They're going to go checking out the Friday sales. You couldn't get me near that. All right, we just got a flurry of 251 blocks. We just got a flurry of those blocks. Hit the tape just now. A flurry of blocks just hit the tape. At that level, 469.36. 469.36. While SPY is trading just above 458. All right, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Moderna still going. All right, consolidating again. Moderna, I don't think this is going to be a one-day thing with Moderna. Everybody's freaked, not everybody, but most people are freaked out. I told my wife about it, this COVID. She, she started laughing. I know, it's probably not the best thing to laugh, but she's been talking about this for a while. Wife was predicting that just by the time everybody got comfortable, another strain would show up and they'd force more and more people that are reluctant to get vaccines. So, interesting. All right, so it looks like dark pools and algos were selling. All right, taking profits, I should say. Thank you, Lee Star, for the update from Mr. Hammer. Moderna at the highs. As my guess is that this is not going to be a one-day thing. Moderna, I would take some profits, maybe trail some at this point. Looks like they might have a little bit of selling coming in the markets. Moderna. And Moderna looks good. Watching Moderna on the 5-minute. Maybe take some profits off up here. It's probably going to stay in this zone. I don't think it's going to just give everything back. There's just too much fear in the markets right now. Appears to be one of the first stocks that everybody jumped into this morning, like Novavax as well. Gapping up. At least Moderna had a nice little entry and followed through. All right, so Caterpillar coming off the low. Just back down to the low, coming off the low now. Caterpillar. Kroger pulled back the VWAP, starting to bounce. All right, SPY. Looking for some buyers to come in. Could be setting up an inverted head and shoulders. We thought that we might see that earlier, but we dipped down below the head, the previous head. So now it looks like the head is 458. If this starts to bounce back up towards VWAP, SPY. All right. So we got this left shoulder potentially. I thought this was an inverted head and shoulders here, but it broke down. So now this could be a head. This could be the low, a head, the right shoulder over here, somewhere around 460. So left to be seen. I'm watching for it. Not doing much of anything. It's Black Friday. So lots of speculation in the markets. A lot of people getting their butts handed to them today. Moderna coming back. I'll reload on Moderna on any dip. All right. All right, starting to see a reversal potential here. RSI is rising. Note the higher low in RSI. We made a lower low. Moderna fading a bit more now. I don't think it's done. I don't think Moderna's done by any means.
APT, Alpha Protect, seeing some volume coming in.
Moderna pulling back a bit more now. All right, Moderna pulling back. Probably going to get some buyers to come in at some point here. Moderna. All right, let's look at BND. BND. Vanguard Total Bond ETF. BND. Still making higher lows. Looking for these bond ETFs to continue showing some strength. Not a one-day affair or a one-week affair. Looking for institutions to park more cash. I'm looking for signs that they're parking more cash, to put it more correctly. So watching where the money's flowing, basically. Is it flowing into bonds? Is it flowing into equities? It's not flowing in equities at the moment. Well, we see like they're buying a dip here. The bond stock ratio between the 10-year. Okay, you can see this is turning up now. Moving average is dropping. We see these directional moves. Pivot low up to pivot high. And then we trend for a while. For a while, it's been over a year. So, 20 months. 20 months of trending. Not bad on the markets. Due for a little pullback? Yes. Will it pull back more? We don't know. We'll have to watch where the money's flowing. For now, though, I have been adding to my bond exposure. I was thinking about the opposite. Last week I was telling you that if we did manage to get above 4,700 and they kept moving the call wall higher, that I'd be interested in adding to my S&P exposure via IVV, iShares Core S&P 500, and T. Rowe Price. Okay, looking for a bounce on that. Blue chip growth. Let's look at, but I didn't do that. So I'm adding to my bonds instead for now. Get them back to about even, 50-50. About 44% and 46% is my current equity exposure. I boosted my exposure from 42 to 44% in the bond ETFs. So 46 and 44 presently, and the rest is in alternative assets, real estate and inflation protected securities, and cash. All right, so what am I doing? Oh, I want to look at this. Okay, so everything is down. and moving back. All right, so when it pulls back, we're looking for buyers to step up. Moderna's back to VWAP now. Moderna. S&P equal weight index. All right, back to the 50-day. All right, so extend this trend line out. A subjective reference point at this juncture. Okay, this looks like more of a something like that. CCI is now oversold, so I got another signal potentially on CCI. Setting up soon. That was the last signal. All right, so we're waiting for that. Looking for a signal here. Whoops. A lot of stocks will be below their 50-day. All right, Moderna, mRNA. Pulling back now, Moderna. Just like that, it was up. And we're starting to see some support near VWAP. I don't think this is going to drop all the way back to yesterday's or Friday's or Wednesday's close. But looks like profit taking over the last 30 minutes. Make sure you're double checking your thesis. If you're taking trades in a particular sector, you're thinking about bounces. I'm seeing biotechs are strong, IBB. That's probably going to continue, IBB. Pharmaceuticals, IHE. India, Hilo, Echo, IHE, the ETF. Kroger, pull back the VWAP. Doximity has a flat VWAP, DOCS. Doximity, flat VWAP. Most likely the best it's going to do is get back up to the highs maybe. It's a flat VWAP, so I'm expecting price to just do that, oscillate today. Compared to Wednesday when it pushed above VWAP, VWAP kept tilting higher and the relative volume was pretty decent. We kept trending. DOCS is one that Grover mentioned on Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday, I forget which. Caterpillar trying to get back up above VWAP. Best Buy above VWAP, Best Buy. Macy's said it was one of the best days they've seen. Black Fridays, best Fridays, Black Fridays they've seen in a while. All right, Macy's, that did pull back. Okay, this is the area where I'm starting to look for an entry again on Macy's. Between the 21 and the 50. Nothing right now. EVGO. EVGO. All right, that one's back to the 21 day. Looking for a bounce. NIMO is minus 76.
South Africa says breakthrough infection seen with variant, no indication that those are severe cases.
low tick alert minus 800.
All right, so I don't see much going on here, folks. I just don't see any reason to be buying or selling anything at the moment. Just going to hold to it. All right, so we're below VWAP. We continue to push below VWAP. As long as we stay below VWAP, you have a bearish bias, so VIX is still hanging tough at the highs.
EU member states agreed to suspend all travel from Southern Africa due to new coronavirus variants.
Just sitting and watching. Pays to be patient. All right, watching for buyers to come in. Waiting for buyers. It is, we got an hour to go. An hour to go in the trading session. EVGO starting to move here. Watch
12
EVGO.
o'clock.
EVGO on move. What is NIO doing? NIO, okay. All right. Trying to make a reversal here on SPY. VIX is about to drop off. Watch VIX for the drop off. All right, we start to drop off from this level. That would be one of the things I'm looking for. I'm also watching for tick cumulative to turn up, which is telling me institutions are buying. It has yet to do that. It is trying to turn, though. It is trying to turn. All right. VIX hanging tough. Today is one of those days where I don't do much when the markets are at extremes. Could be more extreme, so I'm not jumping in head first on the long side. I'm watching for how they deal with today. News related, we already started off the day with a negative gamma setup, so news tends to be more important when we have a negative gamma setup versus a positive gamma setup. We're below the volatility trigger, so that's telling me to just bide my time, be patient. That's a learned experience over the years. I don't get upset because the markets are lower. Markets have been lower like this before since March of 2020 when the markets reversed after COVID. We've had plenty of times where the markets were down 100 handles on the futures, only to be at all-time highs just a couple of weeks ago. So these two can get bought. We just need to see where the money's flowing. That's all. That's all I'm doing right now. Waiting to see where the money's flowing. Might have to wait until after the close, unfortunately. But I'm not overreacting. That would be foolish. If anything, if you're worried about downside, just do what I've been doing and buy some protection like the Vanguard Total Bond ETF. All right, that's off the highs of the session right now. Okay, back to VWAP. So I bought over here, close to where we are right now. Looks like institutions have been parking some assets, parking some cash in bond ETFs where they're safe, and waiting until all clear. That's what you should be doing. That's what I'm doing. That is what I'm doing. All right. What is looking okay? Sector-wise, we're still only have one sector that is green, that's biotechs. We have 90% of stocks are red, 10% are green on the NASDAQ 100. NASDAQ 100. Oh, we're starting to see a little bit of activity here. Watch the VIX. We start to gap down. They start selling volatility. SPY could reverse here. A lot of people looking for the big win on the downside. Looks like we've already got the gift on the gap down. Take some profits off and see if we can get a reversal underway here. Feels like that's what's up.
High took alert plus 800.
High tech. High tech shorts covering. All right, we get above VWAP. I'm going to add to my calls. Well, we'll get back in, I should say. I got stopped out. 460, 462, 464. All right, so we're starting to see some shorts covering. I would just look at it as shorts covering. It's got to get above VWAP.
South Africa reporting 2,828 new coronavirus cases. That's up 258% versus last week. Positivity rate of 9.1% in South Africa. South African health minister says it will be necessary for government to take some precautions over the variant, but exact restrictions are not decided. That from Reuters.
High took alert plus 800.
All right, looks like we're going to get through the VWAP and start to rally. All right, so patience. We had to wait a couple hours. Let's see what these guys are talking about here.
Helps make people panic and it's causing oil to be lower. But do I think oil's $60 in 2022 because the economy has screeched to a halt because of this variant? I mean, it's possible, but what investors have to keep in mind is South Africa's vaccination rate's like 24%, and the number of cases reported is 2,400. So even though this new variant's a large share, it was the cases were over 30,000 in the summer. So it's look, policymakers are panicking, and generally when policymakers panic, that's when investors want to actually step in.
So just to be clear, you're saying buy the dip. What would you be buying?
Yes. NAKD, Naked Brain Group,
I don't want to sound like
Naked retraced today, so BPW through a subsidiary bought back 1 million shares that we had owned before and sold at much higher levels.
I think it's going to be
We are now recommending you buy or sell it. We think it's interesting here at these levels.
This morning.
That
The cyclicals, casinos and hotels selling off and retailers, these are companies that dramatically cut costs and they have huge demand. And investors, unless the entire world decides to buy bonds, stocks are still cheaper than bonds. You're paying over 50 times to buy a 10-year. You're paying, more than that, 65. You're paying 50 times to buy an investment grade bond. The S&P, at 20 times our 2022 estimate. It's still a bargain.
Yeah, there was a couple of signs here that the market sort of stopped going down at the down 1,000 on the Dow, and the down 100 on the S&P level right here. What signals would
Still got to get above VWAP.
suggest that in fact either the fever is starting to break, or in fact we're in for a little bit more pain here? Because I think everybody remembers that Friday when COVID first started to be brought to bear on the stock market back in February of 2020. Market was down 1% today. That Monday we actually kind of lost more ground. So clearly the muscle memory maybe makes people nervous.
That was when COVID was first coming out.
Michael, that's a great point. Again, I don't know the future, so I'm saying things based on our historical, our look at past cycles and our evidence-based work. But one thing that's always a clue to tell you should be a lot more scared is when the VIX term structure, the futures curve, really starts to invert. So in other words, it's pricing in near-term volatility greater than out-term, a negative premium essentially. Today I'm staring at it. It's still a positively sloped VIX futures curve. So even though we've got a spike in the VIX, the market is really saying this is I don't have liquidity day. It's not that I think there's big calamity that we're facing for the next few weeks. So I would say the VIX signal today is this is the bottom. But You're absolutely right. I mean, anything could happen over the weekend, and there could be a meteor strike as well, and that would be 3 strikes.
Yeah, no,
Let's hope not on that.
I hope not.
But Todd, I just wanted to bring up the Fed because that's part of the story here. And already, after if the past few weeks and days have been about pricing in a faster taper and a sooner interest rate hike, already that's starting to unwind. We're seeing that in the money market fund. So May was 50-50. Now they're taking off June and punting it to September. At least if you look at where the market is expecting the first interest rate increase to come from the Fed. And I wonder. Clearly, you're seeing that kind of reaction in the bond market, but if that continues, and if this does cause some sort of economic event or consumers to pull back, when that might become a good thing for investors if the Fed isn't so quick to pull back on stimulus.
Yeah, that's spot on, Sarah. I mean, as you know, the bond market's been fighting the Fed over the summer, really pushing the markets to show liftoff way sooner than the Fed has been explicitly saying. But the reason for that was inflation was super hot, like supernova hot, and there was a belief that the global economy was coming back, roaring back. Well, I mean, if you got panic like this and commodities are down, I mean, to me, I think that the bond market is now having to realize that was a crowded trade to bet on liftoff. So you're absolutely right. I mean, if anyone thinks that the Fed is now going to be pushed into raising sooner, this is a huge amount of cold water.
Yeah, not a lot of inflation talk today. Tom Lee, very valuable to have you on a day like today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Fun strat. Let's talk more about this variant and what it could mean for the world's fight against COVID-19. Joining us, former FDA Commissioner and CNBC contributor, Dr. Scott Gottlieb. It's good to have you here, Dr. Gottlieb. We don't know a lot. We don't know very much about this new variant. But based on what we do know, how concerned should we, investors, the general public be?
Well, look, on the one hand, it has mutations that have been associated with immune escape from the protections offered by vaccination, also the protections offered by prior infection. And the epidemiological data so far, although we have very little data on the epi and the spread of this in South Africa, does seem to suggest that it may be more transmissible. In particular, it has major escape mutations on each of the 3 dominant epitopes that we produce effective antibodies against. That said, it's important to remember this does not mean that this new variant will fully escape the vaccines or even meaningfully escape the vaccines. It may be a situation like we had with 1351, the beta variant, where the vaccines are less effective, but they're still effective enough when you have widespread exposure to the vaccines across the population. Remember, with that variant, 1351, the vaccines, a fresh vaccine was only about 75% protective. But that kind of protection, if that's what we end up seeing here, is still going to be quite sufficient in being able to use the vaccines as a tool to control the spread of this, given all the other immunity we have in our population and also the advent of drugs that will be coming on the market. Remember, someone who's walking around right now with a vaccine that's 6 or 7 months old probably only has about 50% protection against the Delta variant with that vaccine. So if we still have 75% or 70% protection against this new variant with this vaccine, that's still going to be quite protective. Finally, the final point here is that when you have a variant that has this many mutations in it, as this one does, there is some suggestion from the literature that it becomes less contagious. And so we may see this spreading in pockets of the community in South Africa. But on the whole, this may be a less contagious variant because it's acquired so many mutations. And that's what we've seen in certain cases in the past. So I think it's early days to call that this is going to really change the nature of the game, at least here in the United States, where we have a lot of immunity. The risk is that we get through this Delta variant, we start to see prevalence levels decline very sharply, and then this new variant starts to get a foothold and changes the equation for the spring or the summer, which should have been a very quiet spring and summer with COVID. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's way too early to draw that conclusion. I think, if anything, that is the risk, though, that this is something that we have to deal with 3-4 months from now.
Right. Dr. Gottlieb, you went on record numerous times and said that you thought that Delta would be the last major variant that we would have to contend with. Do you stand by that?
Yeah, look, I still feel that way because we don't know as much about this. What I said specifically was Delta would be the last major wave of infection, barring something really unexpected with this coronavirus. I think it's way too early to conclude that this is that unexpected thing with the coronavirus. We don't know how transmissible this is. It's likely to be less transmissible because it's accumulated so many mutations, but we don't know. Again, the epidemiological data is very early. They're oversampling for it right now in South Africa, so you're probably getting a skewed picture of its prevalence. And we also don't know how effective the vaccines are going to be. And if, you had to put down a point estimate right now, looking at the characteristics of this virus relative to what we know, and we don't know a whole lot, you would estimate that you're not going to lose the vaccines here, that there may be some diminished vaccine efficacy, but they're still going to be protective against this variant. So if a fresh vaccine is still 70% protective against this variant, it's not all bets off. What it is going to do, though, is increase the pressure to get people boosted, get the unvaccinated vaccinated, and vaccinate kids, because the more that we can get more immunity into the population and more robust immunity into the population, the more protected we're going to be. And the boosters become very important because diminished vaccine efficacy becomes more of a risk if you have a strain that can better penetrate the protections offered by the existing vaccines.
Down 927 now on the Dow. When will we know the answers to these questions? How long will it take to know whether vaccines do hold up, for instance, against this variant?
There's some in silico, so some modeling data floating around right now among virologists that suggests that you don't get complete escape with this. That's way too early to draw conclusions from because we don't have good enough in vivo data in humans to really have accurate models. We'll have neutralization studies in about 2 weeks, meaning that we'll have studies from laboratories showing how well the complement of antibodies induced by vaccination neutralizes virus. I would expect to see some decline in the neutralization given the characteristics of this virus, but I wouldn't expect to see a situation where you get something that falls off a cliff, where the existing vaccines just aren't effective against this, aren't clinically effective against this. So I think we're going to retain some potency and enough potency in a country like the United States, where there's a lot of pre-existing immunity to protect against another huge wave of infection. And that's really the risk, that you see prevalence decline as we get into January and February, and then we have another sort of B117 situation where you saw prevalence coming down last winter, and then when 117 started to circulate, all of a sudden we got that second spike in March, and this kind of ruins the spring. Too early to say that's what's going to happen. I think that's sort of a worst case right now, but I think it's way too early to say that's what's going to happen. And the other thing is people who've been infected with Delta probably have pretty good protection, and people who've been infected and then subsequently been vaccinated, all the studies that we've done show they have very robust protection against these new variants, and so they're in pretty good shape as well.
What would you say about border controls, which are already starting to come back? We've seen the UK, Europe, Israel, a number of countries already putting flight bans and suspending flights in place against places like South Africa and other southern African countries. Is that a prudent step? Should the U.S. be doing that?
I think it's a big mistake in the long run because it's going to discourage nations from disclosing these things early. I mean, South Africa was very early to disclose this. We're dealing with very preliminary data right now. They did the right thing from a global standpoint. And if the result for being early and disclosing this information is you get economically punished, countries are going to become more reluctant. At this point, this variant probably is globally distributed. I think putting in place restrictions on who can travel, for example, requiring people to be vaccinated to come into the country makes prudent sense. But closing down travel in a wholesale fashion, as we've seen some nations do today, I think that's a big mistake both in the near and the long term.
So it sounds like you are looking at the silver lining here. I mean, it's important to hear from you. We have not heard that before, that more mutations potentially could make it less contagious and less spreadable. So ultimately, Dr. Gottlieb, do you still think the end of the pandemic is near? You've talked about as soon as January. Is that still the case?
Yeah, look, people are concluding that this may be more transmissible because of the rapid growth in cases, but we don't know whether that's a founder's effect. You've had an outbreak of this variant in particular regions. Vaccination rates are low in South Africa. They've deployed different vaccines than us. Many people who've gotten the mRNA vaccines are only partially vaccinated. At least half of the people who've gotten the mRNA vaccines are only partially vaccinated. And they're now oversampling for this because they can detect it on PCR. So I think you're getting a skewed picture of the growth of this. That doesn't mean it's not more transmissible, but I think right now concluding that it's way early to conclude that. I still believe Delta is the dominant variant here. We're going to be through this Delta wave probably by January. You see prevalence declining sharply in the South and the Southeast, the Pacific Northwest. It's starting to come down in the Southwest right now, and states like Colorado. You're still going to see a Delta wave in the Northeast and the northern regions. The Great Lakes regions are still coming up. But we're closer to the end of this Delta wave than the beginning. So on the back end of this, prevalence will decline. I think barring, again, something unexpected, we're going to be in a more endemic phase with this. I think the risk of a new variant like this emerging is that it kind of ruins that picture heading into the spring. By March, we should have been out of this. And if this is something that's more transmissible and pierces the vaccines, it could increase prevalence coming into March. I think it's way early to conclude that right now. It seems like some people are drawing that conclusion. I think this is very speculative at this point.
Well, let's hope you're right on that. Down 875 on the Dow. You know, we've talked a lot about the potential to evade vaccines. What about the treatment toolkit that we have developed here? Thanks to companies like Pfizer that you're on the board of, Merck with the pills. We've got monoclonal antibodies from Regeneron and Lilly. What is the likelihood those kind of treatments hold up to protect us against this new variant?
Yeah, and that's the other point. This won't defeat our technological toolkit. So Western countries that can deploy those technologies are going to be reasonably well protected. First of all, we can re-engineer the vaccines very quickly if this is something that truly is threatening. The small molecule drugs, the oral drugs, including the pill by Pfizer, should work against this, and the pill by Merck, given some of the testing that we've done historically with that. The antibody drugs, it looks like the Vir antibody and the antibody by AstraZeneca will hold up quite well based on the laboratory evidence. You could see the Regeneron antibody and the Lilly antibody put at risk, but those companies also have second and third generation antibodies in development, and they could re-engineer those drugs pretty quickly as well. So we're not going to lose our armamentarium against this new variant. I mean, it may put a wrench in the trajectory and what we need to do in terms of how we deploy those things and put new urgency on getting people vaccinated. But we're going to be able to stay ahead of this. I worry about the rest of the world where you can't deploy those technologies very quickly, including in South Africa where you have under-vaccination that could have opened the door towards the epidemic spread of a new variant like this.
And just to be clear on how long it could take to modify a vaccine to address a new variant, if this one does evade the vaccine, I think Pfizer mentioned today 90 days, which is very short, I know, probably in the scheme of developing vaccines, but is there any way that can be even shorter? And how does that work? Does it have to go through clinical trials again, or can it just be re-released like the flu shot?
Yeah, it'll go through trials where you expose people to the vaccine and you make sure they're getting sufficient levels of antibodies.
VIX dropping more.
Effective against this new variant. So it's not going to require a big outcome study like previous vaccines, probably. I think that this would be done with so-called, immunogenicity studies. That's sort of 90 days, 100 days from initial coming up with the construct to commercial scale production, and companies are already coming up with the construct. So I think we're going to be in a position, if we need to be, to have vaccines widely accessible in time to deal with any wave from this new variant. If this does start to threaten the United States, it's probably months away before we see a real uptick in the cases of this new variant. Given just some of the past timelines with how B117 spread and even the Delta variant, it took a sufficient amount of time, and we're on this very early owing to the good work of the epidemiologists in South Africa. So we have a very good early warning, which shows the world's getting better at this. So I think that there's sufficient time if we need it to, develop and manufacture a new vaccine. And again, I don't think we're going to lose these vaccines. And so if you have a fresh vaccine, if you've been recently boosted or you're newly vaccinated, you're probably going to have pretty good protection even against this. I mean, we'll see where it comes out. Maybe it's going to be 70% protective, maybe 75%. Even if it falls below 70% protection, that's still pretty good protection. Again, remember, someone who's walking around who was vaccinated 6 or 8 months ago with 2 doses of vaccine probably has 50% protection against Delta right now. And so we're seeing levels of Delta infection come down around the country, even with that level of protection from vaccines. And so even if you're in the 60% range, that's still pretty good in preventing, a widespread epidemic of this new variant. So boosters are going to become more important if, in fact, this does start to spread.
Yeah, get your booster. Dr. Scott Gottlieb, we are lucky to have you. Thank you so much for all the information today.
Thanks a lot.
I feel better hearing from him on all of those fronts, and maybe the market does too, down 844 on the Dow, under 2%, now declines on the S&P.
We have firmed up a little bit. Actually, take a quick look at the market action here. Remember, a little more than a half hour before we close. It's a shortened trading day. The Dow is down almost 1,000, now down 843. The S&P 500 is kind of bobbed back above 4,600.
I think the important takeaway is he's not convinced that this is going to evade the vaccine. He's not convinced that it is necessarily going to be a more contagious variant. I haven't heard that the 30 mutations to the spike protein could actually mean that it would be less contagious, and he is sticking by the fact that he thinks that the Delta variant is the last real threat in terms of the United States of a COVID wave.
Yeah, I mean, the one main reason that there was some alarm generated yesterday by this news was the idea that it could essentially outcompete the Delta variant. And so if Dr. Gottlieb feels like that's not necessarily odds on,
He said it's way too early to jump to that conclusion. It really did. It's like very calming to hear that message from him.
I'm glad we grabbed him. So, as we mentioned, the energy sector sinking today with crude prices down double digits. Big oil and gas names like Chevron, Exxon, and Diamondback all down significantly as well. Joining us now is Halima Croft. She is RBC Capital Markets Global Head of Commodity Strategy. Halima, good to speak with you. I mean, you see a 10 or 11% drop in crude, whether you're looking at Brent or WTI in a day. Clearly, the market is at least bracing for some kind of major impact on demand. Does that make any sense to you?
I mean, clearly this was more effective in bringing down prices in the SPR release earlier this week. But the market has been concerned about COVID since the end of October. I mean, part of the reason why we've had oil decline since the end of October was...
All right, I added back Moderna shares that I sold at the highs. We've got a nice pivot going here. The S&P is climbing, VIX is dropping. I'm about to buy the 462 call for Monday. If we continue to push here, volume picks up.
65 to 70 million barrels of additional oil hitting this market, just as we have new concerns about demand emerging. So it's not surprising that we've had this sell-off today. It is a thinly traded day. We just have to wait to see what happens next week with the market. And we're going into a very, very important OPEC meeting. And right now, the Saudi oil minister looks a bit like an oracle for warning that it was too soon to say that Delta was in the rearview mirror.
Right. So what does that tell you about the, I guess, the leaning of OPEC at this point? I mean, you know, now that we've seen prices fall back to really below where they were in June and July at times, do you think that that means that they will be curtailing supply to the degree they have agreement to do so?
I mean, we already thought that OPEC might hit the pause button on their 400,000 barrel a day monthly increase because of the SPR action. I think now as we head into the OPEC meeting on Thursday, it's a question not only will they do a pause, but potentially will they actually pull back some barrels because of concerns about this new variant alongside this very large SPR release. I mean, I think it's worth noting that this SPR release, while it underwhelmed the market, is still the largest SPR release the U.S. has done in history. So we are going to have a lot of barrels hitting this market just as we have these concerns about potential new COVID lockdown restrictions. Again, too soon to say whether governments will pull the trigger on such measures, but the market will be concerned.
Halima, WTI is now $69. It's down 12%. What kind of economic situation is that pricing in?
I mean, again, I think what it's pricing in is two things. I think it's pricing in the fact that, again, we have this very large amount of new oil set to hit the market from consuming countries, and it is a concern about lockdown restrictions. I mean, we do have these restrictions in Austria now. There were concerns about spreading these type of measures to countries like Germany, and so I think anytime you get news about a new variant, we go to the place of fear about lockdown restrictions. It's too soon to say whether other countries will follow suit, but oil had already been pricing in this COVID concern. It's been pricing that in since the end of October.
Halima Croft, great to have you here on a day like today. The energy stock's getting smoked today. Take a look at where we are on the market. We are off session lows, but still a very sharp and very broad sell-off on Wall Street. Energy, as we're showing some of these stocks, off the 12% decline in crude oil, the worst performing sector right now in the market. But if you look across the S&P, every sector is lower right now. Financials, right at the bottom of the pack. Industrial, some of those cyclical groups that are tied to the strength of the economy that had been working really, really well leading up to today on this idea that inflation is strong, the Federal Reserve is going to speed up interest rate increases, and the economy is booming. That's what's getting sold the hardest today. Real estate, consumer discretionary, technology, right down with it. The group that's holding up best is healthcare, and that's thanks to a surge in a lot of the vaccine stocks and the treatment stocks. Moderna's right at the top of that list. The stock is up 22% today. Pfizer up 6%. And we are getting some word, Mike, that these companies are, J&J, a headline crossing, testing its vaccine to make sure it works or to see if it works against the new variant. It's something Dr. Gottlieb said. They're all going to start to do this, and these neutrality tests are going to come out in the next 2 weeks or so. His bet is that he thinks that the vaccines will hold up. He said as much as 70% against the
even as the market suggests that it's an ongoing market for vaccines, for treatments, and it's going to kind of refresh itself for better or worse. That's the way the market seems to be playing it right now. Crypto assets, meantime, also falling hard today. Let's get to Kate Rooney for more on what is driving things there. Hi, Kate.
Hey, Mike. Bitcoin getting hit as investors look to shed some of those higher risk liquid positions and move into safe haven assets like treasuries. That's playing out today with new fears around this COVID variant. Bitcoin dropping as low as $53,000. Earlier this morning, it's off by 20% from its all-time high, putting it in a bear market officially. Since January, though, it's still up more than 88%, 87% it looks like. Other coins, Ether, Solana, XRP, also in the red.
All right, I added 462 calls. After getting stopped out, I bought a few. I just added a couple more.
Especially sharp, there's leverage in crypto markets that can pour fuel on these moves, and a 2.8
All right, so we got
options expiration today.
25 minutes to go.
Be adding to the volatility today. Back to you guys.
Hey, Rooney, Kate, thank you. As far as safe havens go, the dollar is not one today. It is also weakening along with Bitcoin. Gold is actually higher, and the Japanese yen is higher as well. Those are some of the favorites. Bonds, of course, treasuries are the biggie with yields under a lot of pressure. The sell-off is also hitting big tech, including Apple, down about 2%, 2.5% today. Wedbush's Dan Ives joins us now. This is a familiar playbook, Dan, where some of the big cap tech names actually outperform the market on the idea that they'll be resilient if we do have economic weakness as a result of a new COVID-19 wave. What do you do with those stocks today?
Yeah, we continue to be buying tech. I mean, our playbook the last 18 months, anytime we get, whether it's 10-year spike fears, any sort of COVID variant, second wave, you buy the winners in tech. I think we're still in the middle innings of a tech bull cycle going 2022. We have a NASDAQ 19,000 target. And I think you get names like Apple, Microsoft, across cloud, cybersecurity. These are the times to own these names. And then as your earlier guest talked about, ultimately it is a tailwind for tech.
All right, so Doximity is at the highs of the day. That continues to ramp higher. All right.
What if we go back to a period where tech gets hit?
Kroger, looking for a B pivot here. Kroger.
On rising rates, if the Fed does do a faster taper, if this variant does
Moderna rejected at VWAP.
as worthy of economic concern, if it holds up against the vaccines, for instance, then what? If you're in that kind of environment, then tech is...
All right, a little bit more than 20 minutes to go.
I think that's why you need a barbell approach. Right? When you look at names, even like a Microsoft, which I've used sort of a name in this environment, there's obviously, of course, higher risk names, a DocuSign, a Zscaler, and others, but it's a fourth industrial revolution playing out right now. I mean, we're going to have 3 to 4 trillion of tech spend over the coming years. And what's happening now, it's just getting accelerated in this environment. So you look at cybersecurity, cloud, and of course Apple. I mean, we've just done our Black Friday checks showing right now that Apple's probably going to sell about 10 million iPhones over Black Friday weekend. That would be a record. And I think it just speaks to our view of tech going into next year.
Dan, you mentioned the Apple check. People trying to handicap what holiday is going to look like for Apple, given the fact that maybe they have longer lead times, not going to be able to deliver as many products. Do you think the market has been fixated on that? And I keep asking, is it in the stock? I mean, you can talk about Apple stock and say it's really held its value very well. It's got all this stability, but from September 1st of 2020 to now, it's only up about half as much as the market is.
Yeah, chip shortage clearly hitting Apple, and they were clearly conservative in terms of their forecast for the holiday quarter. But I think this is ultimately going to be a clear beat in terms of where we're heading. They could be upwards of 85 million units for the year. I think supply shortages have been alleviated a bit, and the demand right now that we're seeing, I mean, this is a company that looks to be selling about 40 million iPhones between Black Friday and Christmas time. If that happens,
All right, so cooler heads prevail.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on the chip shortage, Dan, because we already know there are travel restrictions here, and we're going to see different countries react differently to this new COVID variant. We were already on the brink of some lockdowns in Europe because of the Delta variant. What does all that mean for the supply chain, which is already so strained and causing so much pressure for some of these companies?
Well, right now, that's the biggest risk over tap in terms of the chip shortage, which is definitely alleviating going into what I view as the first half of 22.
All right,
But I
cooler
think
heads
that becomes
prevail.
the bigger fear. If this
We're
really
watching futures
impacts
really
supply
zipping
chain,
higher
we're up
now.
against that
Looking
in
good.
2022 for auto and tech. But right now, I believe the bar's worse than the bite. In terms of what we're seeing, not just on names like Apple, but even names on the auto side like Tesla and GM, where we're starting to see that moderate. And this is clearly going to be a bit of a risk off day. But I think we look back on today as another golden buying opportunity to own the winners in tech.
All right, Dan, thanks very much. Apple, at the moment, down 2.7%, but really down less than 2% for the week. Appreciate it, Dan Ives. Let's get over to Dom Chu for a look at how long these market downturns on variant headlines have lasted in the past. Dom, kind of sad we have a history to look at here, but what does it tell us?
I mean, it is, but over time, I mean, there's no doubt it's a dramatic sell-off today, and some of the most impacted areas, Mike, in the market are the ones we've come to know so well during the pandemic scares. But here's a reason why some traders and analysts like Dan Ives aren't in panic mode during this relative low liquidity session. It is because through the pandemic era, the effects of new variants has appeared to have less of a market impact over time.
All right, tick cumulative is crossing.
For the Delta COVID variant earlier this summer, the deepest that the S&P 500 has pulled back has been roughly 3 to 4% in less than a week, and that was back in May and then again in July, just as those concerns were building about when infection rates might peak and then subsequently decline, which of course they did earlier this fall. Something to also keep in mind, the S&P 500 did pull back by a much bigger, if you want to look at it that way, 5 to 6% in early September to October. But the bigger part of that story had to do with rising interest rates taking a toll on growth and tech stock valuations. So which is the bigger threat to markets? Is it COVID variants or is it higher interest rates? That's going to be a trend, guys. That's going to be closely watched by traders. But that's the reason why this sell-off today still has some traders saying, hey, you know what? Maybe it's the time to add to positions, guys. Back over to you.
Zoom, Peloton, etc. Okay.
Today, Don, thank you. Want to point out a few of those winners as well. Some of those traditional stay-at-home stocks bucking the broader trend. Zoom Video at the top of the list, no surprise there, up 7%. Peloton up 6%. Netflix is positive 2%. Teladoc, DocuSign, these are the places to go, right? When you think about staying home longer, prolonged return to the office, prolonging vacation plans or going out. Because this is what worked during the pandemic. We've been here before, but so many of these stocks are so far off of their highs that this is like a blip.
Not only that, they're all still down for the week. And Netflix only slightly. But it just shows you that, to me, it's a let's ease up on the pressure here and maybe pick some up as a lottery ticket that, in fact, we go back to some kind of restrictions as opposed to, somebody...
Dix at the high of the day. Doximity up $1.34 at the high of the day, new high of the day.
On this variant to see what kind of impact it could have.
We do. Another group bucking the downtrend today is biotech. Most of the vaccine makers moving higher with Moderna the best performer.
First Solar catching a bid.
Best contributor to the S&P 500 as well. You see it's at 22% today alone. Of course, that stock also way off its highs from earlier this year. Let's bring in Michael Yee from Jefferies and Jared Holtz from Oppenheimer to talk about, I guess, this new setup.
First Solar moving off the low.
Markets quickly rushing to not just the biotech makers, but some of the lab testing companies and things like that to essentially build in expectations that
All right, SPY.
another phase of the
Looking for a follow through.
another pivot in terms of
We've got 15 minutes to go, 17 minutes to go.
products. Does that make sense right now?
Mike, hey, how's it going? It does. It makes sense. I think that the market's obviously been trading, on headlines predominantly, and we get one today that's, obviously beneficial for the lab companies, for the testing companies. So I think the action today is very reflective of what we've seen so many times before this year, where investors are reacting, mainly to the headlines that are coming across, and a lot of the, more detail-oriented work as far as it impacts selective stocks and subsectors is being done subsequently. So I think the happens. We still don't have that much information.
Kroger bouncing. Looks like a B pivot for now. Kroger.
Many cases globally.
KR.
It is regionalized, but again, it's reason for concern. So the vaccines are up, and the testing and some of the diagnostic names as well.
Michael, as you try to filter in this new information into the companies that you analyze, does it make sense to actually change your assumptions about exactly what demand is going to look like, what areas of development they're going to be looking toward, or has the industry essentially always been operating on the assumption that this is an ongoing situation where variants will present new challenges?
Hey, it's great to be here. I would say point number one, the biggest debate, on stocks like Moderna has been whether or not there's going to be demand for boosters this year and next year and in the following years. I think these are the types of days where people are reminded, look, I think COVID is still around. I do think cases are going to go up, and I do think the motivation to get boosters is going to turn up for the short term. So, look, I think it's a big focus on the vaccine stocks. Like you said, they have been beaten down hard, and I do expect some of the vaccine stocks and other antibody stocks like Adagio to probably bounce here and probably sustain that for at least the next couple months.
Jared, what about the Merck results today showing efficacy in terms of the treatment against the Delta variant and COVID-19, but a lot less than the initial results, which were 50%, now 30%. What does that do for the stock and some of those high expectations built in?
Well, I mean, I think for the market, it's already assumed in a way that, looking at the Pfizer data on top of Merck, about a few weeks ago, that the Pfizer antiviral pill was superior or is superior to Merck. I think we're seeing a little bit of the follow through from that based on the data today, with Merck showing, suboptimal results versus what it gave us about a month ago. So I think the Merck move today is, reflective of investors continuing to gravitate more towards Pfizer. The vaccine news, I think, would be, maybe a marginal negative for Merck as boosters, come into play a little bit more. But I think this is, more of what we knew. It's just a little bit dampened for Merck relative to what we had seen about a week ago.
Michael, in terms of
All right, so we're drifting lower again.
are there any that you feel as if are being, overlooked in terms of potential for either whether it's this variant or just in general in this environment when it seems like people essentially rush in and out of a handful of these names based on headlines?
It's a great question. Biotech has been a pretty crazy sector this year. You obviously have the vaccine stocks had a big move this year, but most of the other biotechs have had it tough this year, particularly as everyone rotated, on the post-COVID recovery. It's kind of interesting. You're a contrarian guy. You look at names like Gilead, Biogen, Vertex. These names have been hammered all year long. And I think if people get either defensive or turn the calendar in 2022, I think we're going to be bouncing back to some of those cheap.
All right, we're pulling back below VWAP again.
Thanks for joining us. Michael Yee, Jared Holtz.
Kroger looks like it might push higher.
For you of a special closing bell. Here's what is coming up in the next hour. We will speak with investor Bradley Tusk about the plunge for tech and travel stocks. We'll ask former Walmart U.S. CEO Bill Simon whether the latest variant headlines will keep shoppers away from brick and mortar stores. Retail's getting hit hard today. We'll talk about what this could all mean for the Fed's taper and interest rate hike timeline, and we will take a closer look at casinos and Chinese internets under some serious selling pressure today on all of this news. But first, we've got just about 12 minutes to go here in the trading day, and we are now in the closing bell market zone. Today we've got Lafleur Tangler, Chief Investment Officer Nancy Tangler, and Synovus Chief Investment Officer Robert Nobles here as well. We'll kick it off with the broader market. Stocks have recovered a bit here into the close, but still significant pressure across the board in today's session amid new COVID variant fears coming from South Africa. The Dow is the worst performer of the major averages. It is on track for its worst day of the year. In fact, worst day since October of last year. Nancy, are you doing any selling today? Are you spooked by these headlines?
No, Sarah, we're not. I mean, I think, and happy Thanksgiving, post-Thanksgiving, by the way. We have a hedge in place, as you know. We've talked about that in the past.
Hedges are good. All right, we're pulling back again below VWAP.
Today it seems the computers, the algos are in charge, and there's very little or liquidity in the market. So what we're paying attention to is how does it look early next week? And we would not be sellers in this environment. We would actually be buyers because we do think economic numbers this month, some pretty mixed in terms of the consumer, but we do think that corporate capex is going to be a shining light next year, and the consumer will return.
All right, we got a little bit more than 10 minutes to go. 11 minutes to go.
After inflation up about 0.7%, a little bit below recent trends, but still robust. And those are the things we're paying attention to in our portfolios.
Robert, we now have the S&P 500 with this little
Pulling back below VWAP.
off the lows today, still down a little less than 3% from a record high. So I guess you can look at that as just another dip that we've seen along the way, or potentially a sign that the market is not sticking to what's supposed to be this sort of seasonal script of stronger prices throughout the end of the year. Is it driven you to reassess or change your posture at all here in terms of what types of stocks you like or how much you want to be exposed to the market?
Thanks, Mike. Great to be back. No, in simple terms, no. We would be looking at a shopping list of names. The market, as you mentioned, was down 3. Whether it goes down 5 or a little bit more would not impact our decisions at this time. We had a variety of good news this week, some for the consumer with spending numbers higher and also for income. And you start to see an inventory rebuild, and you're starting to see better cap goods numbers. And even on the wealth front, home prices were higher, home sales were better, and the like. And so while we have an issue with inflation, we still have the Federal Reserve and
All right, we got a low tick alert.
And that's going to allow us to address the situation. We're comfortable with the market where it stands now. And
All right, let's see what it looks like on the daily. So, all right, so a big fat candle. Looks like we're going to come down and test the 50-day next week. That's my guess.
The market always tests a new Fed chair, so we don't have that at least, to be one of these narratives that pops up at this moment. Did want to take a look at energy, though. Pretty dramatic there. It's the worst performing sector on Wall Street today, following crude oil prices. CNBC.com's Pippa Stevens.
B&D, pretty much where I bought it.
Hi, Pippa.
Hey, Mike, energy sector falling more than 4% today, leading the broader market lower. This, of course, follows oil's plunge on concerns that the new variant will hit demand. WTI breaking below that key $70 level, falling more than 12% for its worst day going back to April 2020. Both U.S. oil and Brent crude now on track for a 5th straight week of declines. The Oil and Gas Exploration and Production Fund, ticker XOP, down at 7%, while the Oil Services Fund, ticker OIH, declining at 6%. On a stock-specific level, Marathon Oil, APA, and Occidental are the biggest losers. Giants Exxon and Chevron also falling today, with every component in the energy sector trading in the red. Guys, back to you.
Pippa, thank you very much. Nancy, energy in general, at this point, we've really gone through a lot of kind of mood changes when it comes to people's backing of this sector, but it actually was on another one of its decent runs going into today.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be exposed to energy, I think, for at least the next 6 months. Demand will return, and supply is much more limited than it was just a year ago.
All right, we've got 7 minutes to go for the regular session. SPY is pulling back.
It's not very large, and so
S&P is pulling back.
and let this settle, because as we've seen today, oil prices are extraordinarily volatile, and we've got the big OPEC meeting coming up, so we want to see what's said there. But then I think as the dust settles, you might, if you don't own enough, you might want to step in and pick away.
7 minutes to go for the closing bell. Less than 7 minutes to go.
Back in buying, if in fact we like what we hear from OPEC, and we begin to see the price recover.
Hey, what types of names, Nancy? I'm just looking at some of the carnage here. Occidental down 7.25%. Hess down 7%. As Pippa said, every single one of these names is red today.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we do own FANG, and we would add to that the upstream names. We also own EOG Resources, and then we own some of the green energy names, which is a totally different game, but is ultimately all related. We have been buying those names and hedging them with oil because we need oil for a long time to make green energy work. And so I think you want to be on the upstream exposure, and if you're worried about diversification, then you buy one of the large integrateds like Chevron. I wouldn't be a buyer of ExxonMobil, but that's just a personal preference, where you're collecting the above-market dividend that's growing every quarter, whether you deserve to or not.
Well, the president is getting
just weaker oil prices, just for the wrong reason. Travel and reopening stocks getting slammed today. Airlines are selling off. United wiping away all of its gains for the year in today's session. Cruise stocks, of course, also get hit particularly hard on these COVID fears. Norwegian, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, all down today, double digits. Look at some of these declines, 11, 13%. And other reopening names like casinos and hotels, they're getting slammed as well. Robert, within the carnage, are you a buyer of any of these names? That's sort of what we're looking for here, as we've heard from a number of people on the program that they think today is an overreaction.
Yes, I would clearly agree that today is an overreaction. I mean, you look at where we are currently. Shopping and travel is coming back in a big way. People want to make up for the lost time.
All right, so we got a little hammer here at the low of the day on the 5 minute. 5 minutes to go. 5 minutes to go.
Certain areas like airlines, maybe not in the cruise sector right away, but transportation would also be names we're looking at too. So I would tell you this would be a good time to have a list of names to go to. I don't have any specific names to provide for you today, but I do think long term this is a great area and a great time to get into these areas at this time.
All right, well, consumer stocks holding up a little better than the broader market on this Black Friday. Courtney Reagan has the details on that group, which I guess is more domestically focused, if nothing else, Courtney.
Yeah, sure. And so we can look at big picture and then we can zero in a little more. You know, like the XRT, that retail ETF, is actually under
4 minutes to go for the close.
move on Black Friday for this index. Black Friday has never been up or down more than 1%, at least in the last 5 Black Friday trading sessions. So today's move marks the worst day since September 30th as well. And the XRT is still up about 3% month to date, but that too is kind of atypical. It's been overwhelmingly positive, up more than 8% on average in November over the last 5 years. Mall-based retailers and those that cater to more high-end shoppers who tend to be more sensitive to stock market sell-offs are among the day's worst performers. Nordstrom shares have recovered a lot, but still down about 2%. We're down about 7% at one point, and some of these higher-end names like PVH down pretty sharply. And after its best day ever last week, Macy's down again further here today. Gap shares hitting a new 52-week low, down about 28% in a week. I mentioned PVH. That one has a larger international business, so to your point, Mike, it's not domestically focused, which is probably...
All right, starting to bounce S&P. We've got 3 minutes to go for the closing bell. I hope everyone had a decent day. Maybe you got some profits on the gap down if you still held on to those hedges from last week. High tick alert, end of day.
One of the best long-term charts you'll ever see. They just sort of kind of define this market, and yeah, it's kind of a baby Home Depot type of a model, and it's certainly working.
They did well during the pandemic because they were essential.
Very well. They were considered essential, and people like working on their lawns as well as their homes and things like that, and pets. Pet food's a big business there. Nancy, I wonder if we're talking about the consumer stuff here, I'm looking at Walmart and Costco and Target. They're outperforming today. People are kind of clinging to some of the stalwarts in this market. Does that make sense, or would you look for some of the damaged goods out there in the rest of the sector?
Yeah, Mike, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to know which day we're going to have a reopening trade and which day we're going to have a work-from-home lockdown trade. So what we've tried to do
Doximity.
in either scenario. So a Chipotle, which
Doximity new high of the day there.
discretionary stock that has really honed their digital transformation. But we also really like, we still like the Home Depots and Lowe's of the world. Home Depot's our largest holding in the space. Costco, Target, and Walmart, who have said on their
MasterCard with a bounce.
it's just that our margins may get a little squeezed. And the same with Amazon. We're not going to raise our prices because we, in line with what our costs are going up, because we want to preserve our customer base. I think that's a brilliant long-term strategy. It's just that that Wall Street investors are a little more short-term focused and impatient. So we've been adding to some of those names and holding on to the ones where we have full position.
We've got less than 2 minutes to go here in the trading day. We saw a mini recovery off the lows earlier this hour, and Mike, it looks like we're heading south again. Every sector lower. Dow down 824, so not at the worst point of the session, but it's still going to be the worst day of the year.
Absolutely. Worst day of the year. Also, I believe going to be the worst market breadth for the New York Stock Exchange of the year. At least earlier was tracking that way. We're no longer at 90% of the volume being to the downside, it seems, but pretty close. seems late October of last year was the last time we did that. So it's a pretty comprehensive sell-off. NASDAQ breadth is slightly better, but not a whole lot. The bond market response has been, again, pretty textbook. It's been back to buying longer-term bonds, the so-called duration. Here's the 30-year bond yield.
Our Moderna coming back a bit.
At a very interesting level.
Is that the closing bell?
Since late summer around that 180, 185 mark. So we'll see if there's more buying interest to drive that any lower. The volatility index.
That's it. We're closed.
We got this bit of a spike up to 27. It's about as high as we were back in September sell-off. We'll need to see that come back down to see if that fever has broken.
The FYI, boss went zero. In Zoom trading.
All right, that's a wrap. Okay, so we're closing near the lows of the session. Pretty decent volume. All right, folks. As usual, there'll be a weekend video out on Sunday around 2 p.m. on the East Coast. Check your inbox for that link. Otherwise, have a great weekend. What's left of it. And we'll talk to you this weekend. Take care. Take care, Rob. Ken, take care.